My name is Laura Mitchell. I'm 29 years old and a first responder in Washington's emergency rescue team. At my family's fancy Seattle party, my sister's voice cut through the chatter sharp as a knife. "You're useless, Laura, parading those ugly scars like some hero." Her sneer burned, but then her 17-year-old son stepped forward. His eyes locked on mine and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I owe you my life." The room froze, her face drained of color. What happened before that moment? How did I go from their punching bag to the one they couldn't ignore? Before we begin, drop a comment. What time is it, where you are, and which city are you watching from? And if this story resonates with you, don't hesitate to share a moment when you stood up for yourself. 4 years ago, I was 25, sitting alone in my cramped University of Washington dorm room, staring at a laptop screen that might as well have been a guillotine. The email from the law school admission council was blunt. My LSAT score was 142. Not even close to the 165 my parents, Dr. Robert Mitchell and Diane Mitchell, expected for their dream of me becoming a lawyer. That number wasn't just a score, it was a branding iron searing failure across my future. The phone rang, its shrill tone slicing through my shame. I knew who it was. My mother's voice came through, not angry but worse, disappointed, like she was reading a bad Yelp review. "Laura, we paid for prep courses, private tutors, everything. Your sister never put us through this. Karen aced her LSAT, got into Georgetown, and now she's running her own fashion line. Why can't you just try harder?" She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't ask what went wrong. To her, I was a broken investment, not a daughter. I grew up in a Seattle family where success was measured in degrees and dollar signs. My father, a tenured economics professor, had a wall of framed diplomas in his study, Harvard, Stanford, you name it. My mother, a corporate lawyer, had her own shrine of legal awards in our pristine living room. And then there was my sister, Karen Mitchell, the golden child, whose fashion brand was already featured in Vogue by the time she was 30. Our Queen Anne home was a museum of their achievements, every polished surface screaming perfection. I was the smudge on that glass. My high school track medals, my debate team trophies, they were shoved into a drawer unworthy of display. "Those are nice, dear," my mother once said, her smile as cold as the marble floor, before tucking my latest award behind a stack of Karen's business magazines. That LSAT score was the final nail. We were at dinner the next night, the kind of affair where my parents sipped $20 a glass Cabernet and discussed Karen's latest investor meeting. I sat there pushing my salmon around my plate, the weight of that 142 pressing on my chest. My father set his fork down, his movement slow, deliberate, like a judge about to deliver a verdict. He didn't look at me. He looked at my mother. "Diane, this is what happens when we let her coast. She's not cut out for law school or anything serious, it seems." His voice was calm, but it cut deeper than any yell. Karen, sitting across from me, smirked, her perfectly manicured nails tapping her wine glass. "Maybe you should stick to something easier, Laura, like managing one of my boutiques. At least you wouldn't embarrass us there." The air in the room turned thick, suffocating. I wanted to scream, to throw my plate at that smug grin, but I just sat there, my hands trembling under the table. My parents didn't defend me. They didn't even blink. To them, Karen was the blueprint, and I was the rough draft they'd rather shred. I'd spent my whole life trying to fit into their mold, late nights studying, skipping parties to prep for tests they'd chosen for me. But that night, something snapped. I wasn't just failing their expectations. I was suffocating in them. I excused myself, my voice barely a whisper, and slipped out to the back porch. The Seattle skyline glittered in the distance, but all I could see was that 142 glowing red in my mind, and Karen's smirk branding me as the family's black sheep. The next day, I wandered campus, a ghost among students who seemed to know exactly where they were going. My phone buzzed with a text from Karen. "Don't worry, sis, I'll talk to Mom and Dad. Maybe they'll let you audit my assistant's work." It wasn't an offer, it was a jab, another reminder I'd never measure up. I deleted it, my chest tight with a mix of shame and rage. That's when I saw it, a small booth near the student center, a banner reading Washington State Emergency Response Team. Behind it stood a woman, maybe in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back, and a presence that didn't beg for attention, it demanded it. She wasn't handing out flyers or shouting slogans. She just looked at me, her eyes steady like she saw something I didn't. I didn't know her name yet, but that moment, that look, it changed everything. I stood frozen at the edge of the University of Washington Student Center, the crowd buzzing around me like static. That woman behind the Washington State Emergency Response Team booth hadn't moved, her gray hair pulled tight in a bun, her posture radiating a quiet strength that made my own uncertainty feel like a weight. She didn't wave me over or flash a fake smile like the other recruiters. She just held my gaze, her eyes sharp but not unkind, like she could see the storm inside me. I stepped closer, drawn in despite myself. Her name tag read, Margaret Maggie Thompson, retired first responder. "You look like you're carrying something heavy," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the noise. "Want to tell me what it is?" I didn't know why I opened up, but I did. I told her about the LSAT, the 142 that branded me a failure, my mother's cold disappointment, my sister's smirk. Maggie didn't flinch or offer pity. Instead, she leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table. "I failed my first paramedic exam," she said. "Thought it was the end of the world. But out there, saving lives, you learn your worth isn't a number or a degree. It's what you do when everything's on the line." She slid a pamphlet across the table, her finger tapping a photo of a team pulling someone from a wrecked car. "This work isn't glamorous, but it's real." You, in her words, hit like a spark. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than shame possibility. I spent the next few days researching. Emergency response wasn't law school or a corner office, but it was raw, urgent, alive. I saw videos of first responders wading through floods, pulling families from burning homes. Maggie's team trained in Oregon, tackling everything from wildfires to car crashes. I stayed up late, my laptop glowing with application forms, my heart racing at the thought of doing something that mattered. Not to my parents, not to Karen, but to me. I filled out the form, hit submit, and felt a knot in my stomach loosen just a little. A week later, I walked into our family's dining room, the same one where my father had called me a disappointment. The table was set with linen napkins and crystal glasses, the kind of setup my mother insisted on for important discussions. My parents were there, sipping coffee, my father flipping through a journal, my mother scrolling her phone. My sister Karen sat at the head of the table, her laptop open to some investor pitch. I took a deep breath, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. "I'm joining the Washington State Emergency Response Team," I said, my voice clear, louder than I expected. "I start training in Oregon next month." The room went quiet, the kind of silence that feels like a held breath. My father set his journal down, his eyes narrowing. "Emergency response," he said, his tone dripping with disbelief. "You're throwing away your future to play hero in a hard hat." My mother didn't look up from her phone, but her sigh was loud enough to fill the room. "Laura, this is just another impulsive move. You couldn't handle law school, and now you think you can handle... what, disasters?" Her words stung, but I was ready for them. I'd heard versions of this my whole life. Karen was worse. She closed her laptop with a sharp snap, her lips curling into that familiar smirk. "So you're running from failure, Laura. That's what this is, right? You bomb the LSAT so you sign up for some blue-collar charity stunt to feel better about yourself." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "You'll quit this too, just like everything else." Her words were a blade, but I didn't flinch. I looked straight at her. "I'm not quitting," I said. "This is my choice. I'm done chasing your shadow, Karen." My father shook his head, his voice cold. "This is a waste, Laura. You could still retake the LSAT, get serious. We didn't raise you to waste your potential." My mother finally looked up, her eyes tired, like I was a problem she didn't have time to fix. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" she said, not even trying to soften it. I stood there, my fists clenched, their words piling up like bricks around me. But Maggie's voice echoed in my head. "Your worth isn't a number or a degree." I walked out there, disappointment heavy but no longer suffocating. For the first time, I wasn't running from them. I was running toward something. I stepped off the bus in Bend, Oregon, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, the weight of it, nothing compared to the expectations I'd left behind in Seattle. The training camp for the Washington State Emergency Response Team was a sprawling facility, all concrete and chain-link fences buzzing with recruits who looked tougher than I felt. I was 26, my LSAT failure still a fresh scar, but Maggie's words, "Your worth isn't a number," pushed me forward. The first day, our lead instructor Daniel Carter didn't waste time. "This isn't a game." He barked, his voice rough as gravel. "You'll be tested physically, mentally, every way that matters. Quit now if you can't handle it." His eyes scanned us, lingering on me for a second like he could smell my doubt. The training was brutal. Day 1, we ran 5 miles with 30-pound packs, my legs burning, lungs screaming. I tripped during a rope climbing drill, scraping my knee raw, but I hauled myself up, Karen's voice echoing in my head. "You'll quit this too." I didn't. We learned to navigate mock disaster zones, collapsed buildings, flooded streets under timed conditions. One drill had us crawling through a smoke-filled tunnel, the air so thick I could barely breathe. A guy next to me, Jacob Evans, panicked, his hands shaking as he fumbled his gear. I grabbed his arm, steadying him. "Focus," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. He nodded, and we made it through. Jacob, a lanky kid from Spokane, became my shadow after that, always asking questions, always watching. The mental tests were worse. Instructors threw curveballs, simulated triage scenarios, where you had to choose who to save first. I froze during my first one, a mock car crash with screaming victims. Daniel pulled me aside after. "You hesitated, Mitchell," he said, his tone firm but not cruel. "Out there, hesitation kills. You've got the instincts, but you need to trust them." I nodded, my chest tight, replaying my mother's sigh. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" That night, I stayed up practicing knots and memorizing protocols, determined to prove I wasn't the failure they thought. Weeks turned into months. I got stronger faster, my hands steady as I bandaged wounds or hauled equipment. Maggie checked in once, her voice crackling over a video call. "You're doing this for you, Laura," she said. "Not them." Her words were fuel. During a final endurance test, a 10-mile hike through pouring rain carrying a dummy on a stretcher, I pushed through, my muscles screaming, Karen's smirk flashing in my mind. My team finished first, and Daniel gave me a nod, the closest thing to praise he ever offered. "Not bad, Mitchell," he said. I felt a spark of pride, something I hadn't felt in years. Graduation day came, a crisp morning in June. I stood in my Navy uniform, a certificate in hand, top of my class. Jacob clapped me on the shoulder, grinning. "You're a machine, Laura," he said. I smiled, but my thoughts drifted to Seattle. I wanted them to see this, to know I wasn't running from failure, but toward something real. I called home that night, my heart pounding as I dialed. My mother answered, her voice clipped, distracted. "Laura, this isn't a good time. Your sister just landed a major deal with a New York retailer. It's a big moment for her." I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "I graduated today, Mom," I said, my voice steady despite the ache. "Top of my class." There was a pause, long enough to feel like a slap. "That's nice, dear," she said, like I'd told her I'd cleaned my room. "But Karen's deal is going to change her career. You understand, don't you?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. The pride I'd felt hours earlier curdled into something bitter. I hung up, staring at the certificate on my bunk. Maggie's words fighting to break through. "Your worth isn't a number." But my mother's dismissal, her obsession with Karen's success, made it clear to them I'd never be enough. I packed my gear the next day, ready to join my first assignment. Jacob and the others were buzzing about their families coming to visit, but I didn't expect anyone. My father hadn't called, Karen hadn't texted, and my mother's words still stung. I wasn't their version of success, but I was starting to build my own. The road ahead was uncertain, disasters, long hours, lives on the line, but for the first time, I felt ready. I was 27, standing knee-deep in freezing floodwater in Snohomish County, Washington, the rain pounding my helmet like a drum. It was my first real assignment with the Washington State Emergency Response Team, and the world felt like it was unraveling. The river had overflowed, swallowing homes, cars, everything. Our team, led by Chief Daniel Carter, got the call at dawn. A family of 4 was trapped in their house, the water rising fast. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from something else, purpose. I could still hear my mother's voice from a year ago dismissing my graduation. "That's nice, dear." I shook it off, gripping my radio as Daniel's orders crackled through. "Mitchell, you're with me. Move fast." We waded through the murky water, the current pulling at my legs. Jacob Evans, my teammate from training, was on my left, his face pale but focused. The house was half submerged, the roof barely visible. A woman's voice screamed from inside, raw with panic. "Help my kids." Daniel pointed to a shattered window. "Laura, get in there. Jacob, secure the rope." I didn't hesitate. I climbed through the glass, scraping my gloves, and landed in a living room turned aquarium. The water was up to my waist, furniture floating like ghosts. A woman, Lisa Harper, clung to a staircase, her 2 kids, a boy about 10 and a girl, maybe 6, huddled behind her. Her husband, Michael Harper, was trying to pry open a jammed door, his face gray with exhaustion. "Stay calm," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos. "We're getting you out." I grabbed the kids first, passing them to Jacob through the window. The girl was crying, her small hands clutching my jacket. "It's okay," I told her, my own fear buried deep. Michael was next, but Lisa slipped, her head dipping under the water. I lunged, pulling her up, my arms burning from the effort. We got her out the rope, guiding us to safety. On the shore, the family collapsed, sobbing, Lisa grabbing my hand. "You saved us," she whispered. "Thank you." I nodded, my chest tight with a feeling I couldn't name, pride, maybe, or relief. Daniel clapped my shoulder. "Good work, Mitchell." He said, his voice gruff but warm. Jacob gave me a quick grin, and for a moment I felt like I belonged. Back at base, I sat in the break room, my uniform still damp, replaying the rescue. I wanted to tell someone, anyone who'd care. I pulled out my phone and called home, my fingers trembling as I dialed. My mother answered, her tone brisk, like I was interrupting. "Laura, what is it?" "We're in the middle of planning Karen's launch party." I swallowed, my throat tight. "I just saved a family." "Mom," I said. "A mom, a dad, 2 kids. Their house was flooding and I got them out." There was a pause, then a sigh. "That's great, Laura. But you know your sister's brand is going international now. She's meeting with Paris buyers next week." Her words hit like a punch, but I pressed on. "Mom, I'm doing something real here. Doesn't that matter?" Another pause. "Of course it does," she said, her voice flat. "But let's not exaggerate. You're just starting out." I hung up, my hands shaking. The next day, a package arrived at the base addressed to me in my father's precise handwriting. I opened it, expecting maybe a letter, something to show they'd heard me. Instead, it was a stack of law school applications, glossy brochures for programs in Seattle, a post-it note from my mother. "You can still fix this. Laura, fix this." Like saving a family was a mistake, like my work was some childish game. Karen's name was scrawled on one brochure, a reminder of her Georgetown degree, her perfect path. I shoved the papers into a drawer, my jaw clenched. They didn't see me? They never would. Maggie's voice came back to me. "You're doing this for you." I held on to that because out here with people like Lisa and her kids, I was making a difference, even if my family called it a game. The base was quiet that night, most of the team gone home. Jacob sat across from me, eating a vending machine sandwich. "You okay, Laura?" he asked, his voice soft. I nodded, but my mind was on that package, those brochures mocking everything I'd fought for. I wasn't just a first responder, I was someone who'd saved lives. But to my family, I was still the failure who couldn't be Karen. The summer of my 29th year, Washington was burning, the Okanogan Complex fire. One of the worst in state history tore through forests, blackening the sky with smoke that choked the air. I was with the Washington State Emergency Response Team, my boots crunching on ash as we fought to evacuate a remote community near Twisp. Chief Daniel Carter's voice crackled over the radio. Mitchell, you're on point. Get those civilians out. I nodded, my pulse, racing, the heat pressing against my gear like a living thing. Jacob Evans was at my side, his face streaked with soot, his eyes wide but steady. We'd done this before, but this fire was different, unrelenting, unpredictable. We reached a cluster of cabins, flames licking the trees nearby. A group of campers was trapped, their cars blocked by a fallen tree. Among them, I saw a face that stopped me cold, Ethan Mitchell, my 17-year-old nephew, Karen's son. He was with a school group, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his face pale but defiant. Ethan, I said, my voice sharp over the roar of the fire. What are you doing here? He shrugged, trying to play it cool. Field trip got stuck. Bad timing, huh? I didn't have time to process it. Stay close, I told him, shoving a mask into his hands. The fire was closing in the air, thick with embers. We moved fast, guiding the group, 8 kids, 2 teachers, toward a clearing. But the wind shifted and a wall of flames cut us off. Jacob cursed under his breath, his radio sparking with static. Choppers delayed, he said. We're on our own. My training kicked in. I scanned the terrain, spotting a narrow path through a ravine. It was risky, but it was our only shot. This way, I shouted, leading the group, Ethan right behind me. A burning branch snapped overhead, crashing down. I shoved Ethan out of the way, the wood grazing my arm, searing through my sleeve. Pain shot through me, but I kept moving, my jaw clenched. Halfway through the ravine, Jacob stumbled, his leg caught on a root. The flames were closer now, the heat blistering. I grabbed his arm, pulling him up, my own arm throbbing. Keep going, I yelled to the group. Ethan was helping a younger kid, his face set with determination. We reached the clearing, but the fire was still advancing. I grabbed the flare gun from my pack, firing it into the sky to signal the helicopter. The smoke was blinding, my lungs burning, but I stood my ground, waving the flare until I heard the chopper's blades. The helicopter landed and we loaded the group, Jacob limping, Ethan dragging the last kid aboard. As I climbed in, another branch fell, striking my leg. I bit back a scream, blood soaking my pant leg, but I stayed upright, helping secure the civilians. At the base, medics patched me up. My arm and leg were scarred, permanent marks, the doctor said. I didn't care. Ethan was safe, Jacob was alive, and the others made it out. Daniel pulled me aside later, his face grim but proud. You saved them, Mitchell, he said. That flare call was textbook. I nodded, too tired to speak, the pain in my arm and leg a dull roar. Ethan found me before he left with his group. You didn't have to do that, he said, his voice low, almost shy. Thanks, Laura. I managed a smile. Your family, Ethan. I'd do it again. A month later, I stood in a community center in Wenatchee, my uniform crisp despite the bandages under it. The mayor presented me with a local heroism award, a small medal pinned to my chest. The room was packed. Jacob, Maggie, my team, but not one seat held my parents or Karen. I'd sent them the invitation, even called my mother. It's a busy week, she'd said, her voice distant. Karen's preparing for a Paris show. My father didn't even pick up. I scanned the crowd, hoping, but they weren't there. Maggie squeezed my hand, her eyes steady. You did this, Laura, she whispered. Not for them, for you. I nodded, but the absence stung sharper than the burns on my skin. I'd saved lives, including my nephew's, but to my family it was just another day. I wasn't Karen. I stepped off the plane in Seattle, my arm and leg still tender from the scars I'd earned in the Okanogan fire. At 29, I wasn't the same Laura who'd failed the LSAT or begged for my family's approval. The local heroism award, a small medal tucked in my bag, felt heavier than its size. I'd saved lives, my nephew Ethan among them, but the weight of my family's indifference pressed harder. My mother had texted me to come to Karen's birthday party at our Queen Anne home, no mention of my award or the fire. I went not for them, but because I wanted to face them on my terms. The house was decked out, chandeliers, gleaming tables loaded with catered food for Karen's 36th birthday. My parents, Dr. Robert Mitchell and Diane Mitchell, mingled with Seattle's elite business partners, fashion insiders, all there to toast my sister's latest triumph. Karen stood at the center, her dress designer, her smile practiced. Ethan was there too, slouched in a corner, his phone in hand. I wore a simple blazer, my scars hidden under long sleeves and pants, but they itched a reminder of what I'd done. My mother greeted me with a quick hug, her eyes already scanning the room. "Laura, you made it?" she said, her tone polite but distant. My father nodded his attention on a colleague. No questions about the fire, the medal, or me? Dinner started, and the conversation revolved around Karen, her Paris deal, her new boutique. I sat quietly, my fork pushing food around my plate the same way I had 4 years ago when they'd called me a failure. Then Karen's voice cut through, sharp and deliberate. "Laura, those scars," she said, her eyes flicking to my wrist where my sleeve had slipped. "They're so unsightly. Parading around like some wannabe hero doesn't make you less useless, you know." The room went still, forks, pausing, eyes darting to me. My mother's lips tightened, but she said nothing. My father sipped his wine, his face blank. The word useless hit like a slap, echoing every jab they'd thrown LSAT law school, my choice to save lives. I opened my mouth, ready to fire back, but before I could, Ethan stood up, his chair scraping the floor. At 17, he was lanky, his voice still finding its strength, but his eyes burned with something fierce. "Mom, stop," he said, his tone cutting through the silence. "You don't know what you're talking about." Karen blinked, her smile faltering. Ethan turned to the room, his gaze steady. "Laura saved my life. That fire in Twisp, I was trapped with my school group. The flames were everywhere, and she got us out. She pushed me out of the way of a falling branch, got burned herself, and still led us to the chopper. She's not useless. She's the reason I'm here." The room froze. My mother's wineglass stopped halfway to her lips. My father's jaw tightened, his eyes finally meeting mine. Karen's face drained of color, her perfect composure cracking. "Ethan, sit down," she hissed, but he didn't. He looked at me, his voice softer now. "I owe you my life, Laura. Thank you." My throat tightened, a mix of pride and pain I couldn't name. I nodded, unable to speak, my scars suddenly feeling less like shame and more like proof. The rest of the dinner was a blur. My parents didn't speak to me, their silence louder than Karen's words. Karen avoided my eyes, her laughter forced as she steered the conversation back to her success. But Ethan's words hung in the air, a shield against their judgment. I left early, slipping out to the porch, the Seattle skyline glittering in the distance. Maggie's voice echoed in my head. "You're doing this for you." For the first time, I believed it. I wasn't their failure anymore. I was Laura Mitchell, the woman who'd saved lives, who'd earned her place, scars and all. Ethan's words still hung in the air at my sister's birthday party, the Queen Anne dining room, heavy with silence, after he'd called me out as the one who saved his life. For a moment, I thought it might change something. My parents sat frozen, their faces unreadable. Karen, her perfect smile cracked, tried to steer the conversation back to her Paris deal, but the room felt different now, charged with something raw. I stood there, my scars itching under my sleeves, waiting for a response, an apology, a glance, anything. But my mother just sipped her wine, her eyes avoiding mine. My father cleared his throat, turning to a guest about some economics conference. Karen laughed too loudly, tossing her hair. That's when it hit me, Ethan's truth didn't matter to them. I didn't matter. I'd spent years chasing their approval through the LSAT, through law school dreams they'd forced on me, through every cutting remark about my failures. I'd saved lives, earned scars, pinned a heroism medal to my chest, but to them, I was still the shadow of Karen's spotlight. Something snapped inside me, a dam breaking after years of holding it together. I pushed my chair back the scrape loud enough to make the heads turn. Enough, I said, my voice steady, but burning. I'm done. My father's head snapped up, his brow furrowing. Laura, sit down, he said, his tone sharp like I was a student interrupting his lecture. I didn't. I looked at him, then at my mother, then at Karen, who was smirking, one eyebrow raised. You've never seen me. I said, my words spilling out, years of hurt sharpening them. I failed your test, didn't I? The LSAT law school, your perfect mold. But I saved people. I saved Ethan. And you. I turned to my mother. You sent me law school brochures after I pulled a family from a flood. You didn't even show up when I got a medal for saving your grandson. My voice shook now, but I didn't stop. Karen, you called me useless. Useless. After I risked my life for your son. And you too, I faced my parents. My chest tight. You let her. You always have. Karen's smirk faded, her fingers tightening around her glass. Laura, you're being dramatic. She said, her voice low, but it lacked its usual bite. My mother set her glass down, her lips parting to speak, but I cut her off. No, Mom. I'm done trying to be what you want. I'm not Karen. I'm not your failure either. I'm me, and I'm enough. The room was silent, the guests staring, forks forgotten. Ethan watched me, his eyes wide but proud. I didn't wait for their response. I walked out the front door, clicking shut behind me, the cool Seattle air hitting my face like freedom. I moved into a small apartment near the rescue team's base. The next week, my medal and scars, the only things I carried from that life. My phone buzzed one evening, Karen's name flashing on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard, hesitant. Laura, I didn't mean it, she said. What I said at the party. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I waited for the relief, the warmth of her apology, but it didn't come. Her words felt like too little, too late, a bandage on a wound that had already scarred over. I don't need your sorry, Karen, I said, my voice calm. I needed you to see me. You never did. None of you did. Laura, please, she said, a crack in her voice. We can fix this. Your family. I closed my eyes. Maggie's words echoing. You're doing this for you. I've got my family, I said. The team. The people I save, Ethan. They see me. I don't need you anymore. I hung up my hands, steady, my heart lighter than it had been in years. I blocked her number, then my parents. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. I sat on my balcony that night, the city lights stretching out below. My scars caught the glow, a map of everything I'd survived. I wasn't the girl who failed the LSAT or the sister who'd never measure up. I was Laura Mitchell, first responder, the woman who saved lives and found her own. For the first time, I didn't need their validation. I had my own. After that night, after the front door clicked shut behind me and the weight of their expectations finally slipped away, I returned to my work. Not as someone seeking approval, but as the woman I had become, a trainer for the Washington State Emergency Response Team, guiding recruits through the art of saving lives, through floods, wildfires, and everything in between. The scars on my arm and leg are proof of what I've lived through, from pulling families out of floodwaters to carrying my nephew Ethan out of a burning forest. I've earned a medal for heroism, faced down walls of flame, and built a life that I'm proud of. But the hardest lesson I've learned has nothing to do with courage under pressure. It's about knowing your worth even when the people you love the most refuse to see it. For years, I tried to prove myself to my family. My father, a professor, and my mother, always chasing status, expected me to follow a path that wasn't mine: law school, a corner office, a life like my sister Karen's. When I failed the LSAT at 25, they called me a disappointment. When I chose rescue work, they said I was running from failure. And when I saved lives, they mailed me law school brochures like my work was just some detour, a mistake. At Karen's birthday party, after I risked everything to save her son, she still called me useless. That night, I stood up. I walked out. I cut ties. And that was the moment I realized something I wish I'd learned sooner. You can't let someone else's expectations define who you are. I used to think I needed their approval to feel complete. I used to sit at their dinner table, my heart racing, hoping to hear a word, just one of pride. But I always left empty-handed. It wasn't until I let go, really let go, that I found peace. I've built a new family now with my team, with people like Maggie who saw me from the beginning, and with Ethan who stood up for me when no one else did. My scars, my medal, my work, they're mine, not theirs. And here's what I want you to remember. Your value doesn't come from people who don't respect you. It comes from the choices you make, the lives you touch, and the person you choose to be every single day. Don't make the mistake I did. Don't spend years chasing validation from people who refuse to see your worth. It's a trap, one that keeps you small, keeps you doubting. If you're living under someone else's expectations, stop. Ask yourself, who am I doing this for? If the answer isn't me, then it's not worth it. I had to learn that the hard way. But you don't have to. Find your path. Find your people. Find your purpose. Hold on to it and don't let anyone tell you that you're less than enough. I'm sharing this because I know I'm not alone. There are so many of you out there fighting to be seen to be enough. I want to hear your stories, your struggles, your victories, those moments when you finally realized your own worth. Share them in the comments. Let's start a conversation. And if this story resonates with you, hit that subscribe button. Because this isn't just about me, it's about all of us finding our way home. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. You're not invisible. You are enough.
Not to notice the untouched champagne flute and the rapidly cooling steak. I gave her a tired smile and waved off her concerned look. I couldn't bring myself to explain that I'd been sitting there alone for almost 2 hours. Dressed in my best navy dress, hair done, nails freshly painted, a whole evening carved out for a promotion dinner that no one showed up to. Not no one. Just my family. I glanced at my phone again, though I already knew what it said. Dad, you're not exactly a priority right now. The words stung more because of how casually he sent them. No apology. No excuse. Just a blunt rejection that hit harder than any silence could. And then, like a knife sliding deeper, a notification popped up. Cousin Melissa posted, "Family night out for the real success story." Attached was a group photo at some lakeside bar, all of them. Mom, Dad, my brother Chase front and center, grinning ear to ear beside a gleaming new jet ski. My brother had apparently made a killer side hustle flip, and the whole family had dropped everything to celebrate. I looked around the empty table again, the space where their faces should have been. I'd reserved this place weeks ago. Sent reminders. Paid a deposit. I was the first in our family to make it to senior management at a Fortune 100 company, and they couldn't be bothered to show up. Correction, they chose not to. I blinked back the sting in my eyes, lifted my glass, and toasted myself silently. To Emily Carson, the invisible daughter. The check came. $1,940. I'd prepaid for the prix-fixe menu for 6. I added a tip, smiled at the waitress, and walked out with a quiet grace that took every ounce of restraint I had. When I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I did what I always do. I handled things. I opened my banking app. Mortgage payment scheduled for the 15th. Cancelled. Automatic grocery transfers for my parents. Deleted. Monthly insurance premium I'd been covering for Chase's Jeep. Gone. I pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been keeping. Every dollar I'd paid on their behalf since 2020. 3 years. Thousands of dollars. Never a thank you. Not once. I printed out the totals. Highlighted the current outstanding mortgage balance. Scribbled 2 words on a yellow sticky note. Let him pay it. It was almost midnight when I pulled up to my parents' house. The jet ski sat proudly in the driveway, wrapped in a bow like some kind of twisted trophy. I walked up to the door and taped the note and spreadsheet right across the glass. No drama. No speech. I got back in my car, exhaled, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something sharp give way inside me. Not pain, but clarity. They didn't just miss my dinner. They missed the last free ride they'd ever get from me. I was always the one they didn't worry about. The good one. The she'll figure it out daughter. I did figure it out. I studied while my brother Chase threw house parties. I got a job while he wrecked a car. I worked my way through college while he bounced between passion projects. And every time he screwed up, they clapped him on the back for learning from it. Every time I succeeded, they acted like it was expected. I remember the day I bought my first car outright. No loan, no cosigner. I drove it straight to my parents' house, beaming. My dad barely looked up from the game. That's nice, Sam. 10 minutes later, Chase rolled in and announced he'd started a dropshipping business. Mom lit up like it was Christmas morning. It didn't matter what I did, not really. Chase just had to exist to be celebrated. I had to bleed effort just to be tolerated. When their finances tanked, medical bills, bad investments, my dad losing his job, I didn't think twice. I offered to help. Quietly, respectfully. They never asked me for the full picture, and I never gave it. I just started paying. First it was the mortgage. Then groceries. Then the car insurance. I told myself it was temporary. Then came the call at 2 a.m. Chase had been pulled over. DUI. My parents were panicked. I wired the retainer to the lawyer before the sun came up. Still, no one ever said thank you. Not once. Instead, I got text chains about how amazing Chase was doing. A group photo when he got his new tattoo. A Facebook post when he fixed up an old motorcycle with parts 1 paid for. I didn't want recognition. I didn't need applause. I just wanted to matter. A birthday card. A seat at the table. A moment where someone saw me not for what I could do, but for who I was. But in that house, love came in 2 forms. Chase's chaos and my checkbook. And if you weren't performing either, you were invisible. Turns out, in that house, money mattered more than I ever did. When I got the promotion, I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment they'd see me. I didn't expect balloons or a banner.
But a smile?
A warm hug? We're proud of you? Instead, my brother laughed. So, what? You get to boss people around now. My mom smirked. Just don't get cocky, sweetie. Dad didn't say much. Just nodded and asked if I'd remembered to transfer the mortgage by the 15th. That was it. The next week, I overheard something I wasn't meant to hear. I had stopped by my parents' place to drop off a grocery haul. The fridge was nearly empty. I was in the hallway when I heard my mother on the phone with my aunt. We're just trying to keep her grounded, she said. A pause. Then, no, she's not really supporting us. She just helps out sometimes. I froze. Helps out. I'd been covering their house payments, their food, their car insurance, Chase's lawyer, even paid off the credit card debt they swore they didn't know how they accumulated. And yet, they'd reduced me to a side character in my own story. It clicked then, success wasn't something they wanted for me. It was something they resented. Because it meant I was no longer under them. No longer proving my worth with every swipe of a card. I had outgrown the narrative they built for me. The dependable one who always says yes, always shows up, always sacrifices. To them, that version of me was useful. This one? The woman who sat in a boardroom, who made strategic calls, who signed contracts. This version was a threat. The cold shoulders made sense.
The small jabs.
The missed calls. The fake smiles at family dinners.
They weren't proud of me.
They were afraid I'd start asking for something in return. So instead, they twisted the truth. Told the family I was doing fine but didn't help much. That I was too busy for them. That Chase had stepped up lately. That they were holding things down. They rewrote the script, turned my loyalty into an optional favor, my sacrifices into a footnote. Because admitting the truth would mean acknowledging what they'd taken from me. And acknowledging it might mean I'd stop. I looked around their living room. The couch I helped them buy, the TV I set up, the roof I'd kept over their heads. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as financing. I didn't scream. I didn't send a dramatic group text. I didn't even confront them. Instead, I opened my laptop and got to work. First, the documentation. Every payment I'd made, every bank transfer, mortgage receipt, grocery Venmo, lawyer's fee. I pulled them one by one, labeled them, color-coded them. No more blurry lines or forgotten favors. I wasn't just the dependable daughter. I had become their accountant, and now I was closing the books. Then I booked a meeting with a lawyer. I didn't need revenge. I needed protection. I asked all the questions. Was I tied to their home? Could they default in my name? Were there any legal bindings I should be aware of? He nodded, impressed at my thoroughness. You've been very generous, he said, skimming the stack of receipts. That's one word for it, I replied. He helped me draft a termination of support letter. Just in case. Nothing flashy, nothing confrontational. Just the paperwork version of turning off the faucet. I informed the bank that the automatic transfers were ending immediately. I removed my name from the recurring payments. Unlinked their bills from my account. Set up fraud alerts just in case someone got creative. Then I printed a final mortgage statement, circled the remaining balance, and tucked it into an envelope. On the front, I wrote 3 simple words in clean, even handwriting. Try your luck. I slid it under their front door the next morning. I stood on the porch for a moment after, half expecting someone to swing it open, to catch me, to demand an explanation. But the house was still, quiet. It felt strange, peaceful, even. There was no scene. No confrontation. Just the soft click of my heels on their driveway as I walked away for the last time. No announcement. No fireworks. Just a decision. A clean break. Because the truth is, you don't need to blow up a bridge that was never solid to begin with. You just stop crossing it. You don't announce your exit. You just stop showing up to play their game. That night, the neighborhood was lit up like any quiet suburb, porch lights glowing, sprinklers hissing in the distance, a warm breeze rustling the hedges. Their house stood at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Perfect.
Comfortable. Entirely funded by me. And empty. They were still out somewhere, lifting cocktails to my brother's new jet ski like he discovered fire. I'd seen the Instagram stories. Their cheeks flushed, mouths wide with laughter. So proud of you, baby. Mom had commented under the post. I parked across the street, lights off. My hands didn't shake as I pulled the envelope from my purse. Inside was everything. A final mortgage statement, the termination of support notice, copies of payments I'd made over the past 3 years. And the note. Just one sentence, written with the same care I used to write their birthday cards. Let him pay it. I walked across the lawn I'd kept green with my money and slipped the envelope into their mailbox. No key. No knock. No drama. Just the quiet arrival of accountability. Then I left. The next morning, I turned my phone off. I wasn't available for the fallout, but I knew when it started. By Wednesday, the mortgage company had called them.
Twice.
By Friday, they'd received a certified letter. Past due, late fees added. By Saturday, I turned my phone back on long enough to check my voicemail. My dad's voice, once so quick to dismiss, now cracked with panic. Emily, it's your father. We got something from the bank. Did you cancel the payments? Just call me back. Please. I didn't. Mom texted, then called, then tried to loop in my aunt, who sent a 3-paragraph message about family responsibilities. I blocked them all. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of realization. They had never heard it before, not from me. I was the one who picked up, who sent the money, who said yes even when I wanted to scream. But this time, I gave them nothing. No reaction. No reply. Just reality, delivered in an envelope. They wanted to make me feel small by excluding me. They forgot who held the foundation together. And now they felt the floor shift beneath them. Because the silence they gave me, I returned with interest. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. My brother, the golden child, The pride of every family group chat, said he'd take over the payments. Loudly.
Publicly.
Like it was nothing. I got this, he told my parents, puffing out his chest like a cartoon hero. It's just a mortgage. The bank didn't care about his confidence. 2 weeks later, the first missed payment hit. He scrambled, sold the jet ski at a loss. Still wasn't enough. By the end of the month, the house entered pre-foreclosure. A letter nailed it to their front door, in words even pride couldn't rewrite. That's when the storm really started.
My dad showed up outside my apartment building.
I watched him through the peephole for nearly 10 minutes before he finally gave up. Later, his message came through. After all we did for you, Emily. After raising you. After everything. How can you do this to us? I wanted to laugh. Not out of spite, but from the absurdity. Everything? They didn't pay for college. They didn't show up to my graduation. They forgot my promotion dinner. Everything I had, I earned despite them. Not because of them. I didn't reply. A few days later, my mom called. She didn't leave a voicemail. She just cried. Soft sobs echoing over the line, like I was supposed to mistake it for music. I listened. Then I pressed delete. No anger. No cruelty. Just a choice. One they'd made 100 times, when they skipped my wins, dismissed my worth, prioritized my brother's wants over my needs. They taught me how to detach. I just finally learned the lesson. Now they were the ones calling, begging, hoping. And I was the one staying silent. I didn't need revenge. I needed peace. And peace didn't look like saving people who only remembered me when it was time to pay. The golden child was broke. The parents were rattled. The roof was slipping. And I was finally free of the weight. For years, I paid their way. They never thought I'd walk away. My new place smelled like paint and possibility. It wasn't huge, just a bright, modern 2-bedroom condo downtown, but it was mine. Paid in full. No roommates, no parents, no strings. No one else's name on the door. No one calling when they needed help with bills. No one watching my success with a grimace instead of a smile. I stood in the center of the empty living room and just listened to the quiet. Real quiet. Not the kind that follows disappointment, the kind that means freedom. A week after moving in, I launched something that had lived in the back of my mind for years. A podcast. I called it The Forgotten Firstborn. Each week, I told stories, my own and others like me, about being the responsible one. The invisible one. The one who carried too much and got credit for nothing. Turns out, there are a lot of us. The show took off. What started with 20 listeners became 200, then 2,000. Women messaged from every time zone. You're telling my story. I thought it was just me. It wasn't. We were out here, building lives while dragging emotional anchors. I just happened to cut mine loose. When I wasn't recording, I mentored a small group of high school girls in financial literacy and boundary setting. I showed them how to read contracts, spot manipulation, and trust the word no as a full sentence. It was healing. For them and for me. As for my family, we went low contact. I didn't block them. I just stopped replying. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went. No more surprise payments, no more bailouts. They were no longer my responsibility. I checked the county records once, out of curiosity. The house had been sold at auction. A new family lived there now. I hope they fill it with better memories. My brother? He deleted the jet ski photos from Instagram. Last I heard, he moved in with a friend. My parents stopped calling eventually. Maybe they got tired. Maybe they finally understood. Either way, silence again. But this time, it was mine. And I cherished every second of it. Sometimes I'd sit on my balcony with a cup of tea, listening to the city, smiling at the sky like I owed it a thank you. Because I was no longer a background character in my own life. I was building something real, lasting, entirely mine. They didn't get to decide my worth anymore. They didn't get to decide me anymore. I was always the afterthought.
Until I stopped thinking of them.
Exactly 1 year to the day, I walked back into that restaurant. Same white tablecloths. Same host who'd looked at me with pity last time. This time, he grinned when he saw me. "Welcome back, Miss Carson," he said, gesturing to the private dining room. Your party's already here. My heels clicked against the marble floor like punctuation marks to a sentence I finally got to finish. Inside, the room glowed with laughter. My coworkers, my closest friends, the people who saw me,
Celebrated me.
showed up when it counted. No one asked me for money. No one pretended I didn't matter. The table was full, not just of food and gifts, but of respect. I took my seat at the head. This time, the dinner wasn't paid for with guilt. It was earned. I stood up and held my glass high. To the family we choose, I said, my voice steady, strong. And to the day we stop waiting for people to see our worth and just start living like we already know it. Glasses clinked. Cheers rose. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Later that night, as the last of the wine was poured and someone pulled out a Polaroid, my phone buzzed. A message from my cousin. Heard they might lose the house. Your dad's been asking around. Just thought you should know. I stared at the screen. Thought of my father's text from a year ago. You're not exactly a priority right now. Thought of the night they laughed while I sat alone. And then, I left the message on read. No reply. No follow-up. No wait. It wasn't bitterness. It was peace. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure from them. I was already closed. The waiter brought out dessert. A small cake with congratulations, Emily written in gold icing. My friends cheered again. Someone popped a bottle of champagne. And I smiled, not the forced kind I used to give at family gatherings, but the real kind. The kind that comes when you finally stop begging people to see you and build a life where you're impossible to ignore. My story didn't end with a fight. It ended with me choosing joy, without their permission. Because they skipped my table once. Now, they don't even have a seat.